Hello everyone. I thought I'd do something a little bit different with this video. Most of my videos are just sort of narrations of pre-written essays from my Substack, but I thought today I would do a sort of off-the-cuff response to a post that I saw on Reddit recently, on the subreddit for transhumanism. I have written some notes, so in fairness, this isn't totally off the cuff, but we'll just see how it goes. Without any further ado, let's go. This is from subreddit transhumanism, and this guy says, opinions on artificial wombs. I'm sure most of us here are aware of the fact that human infants are born prematurely because of our oversized skulls. Then what if the pelvic bone wasn't a factor? What if we could keep them in the pickle jar a bit longer? I'm curious how much development, such as being able to walk, would come about by just letting them gestate for a few more months. It'd also relieve people of the horrid process of pregnancy and childbirth, so I'm all in favour. Now, the first thing that just jumps out at me from reading this is, the idea of playing God. He asks, what if we could keep them in the pickle jar a bit longer? How much extra development could we get by letting them gestate a bit longer? Which, is just fraught with these ethical implications, and you'll see as we go through it, nowhere in any of these comments does anybody ever raise the question of, is this something we should be doing though? It's like that Jurassic Park quote, we spent so long thinking if we could do it that we never stopped to think if we should do it. Ultimately, these people are materialists, right? Along with materialism comes this incredibly shaky foundation for morality. We'll see as we go through it. The presumption that sort of overrides all of this topic is that this course of action is morally correct or at least neutral. But we'll see that as we get into it. And also one thing to look out for as we go forward is there are these sort of sick anti-human overtones throughout these posts. But continuing, Zarathustra 1313 comments, "This is the future, and probably the only way to prevent demographic collapse and keep female body autonomy and strong feminism. Otherwise the religious will replace us, and it won't be a fun society or a very technophilic one either. The social possibilities are endless. Male-only gay colonies, female lesbian biker colonies, a new genderless tribe with no sexual organs, etc., etc." First thing that jumps out at me here are the sort of Faustian implications. Another sort of theme throughout all these comments is this presumption that material conditions have reached a point where this course of action is not only possible but indefinitely possible. This guy says this is the future, implying that this is just how it's going to be now. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think this is necessarily the future. It may potentially be the present. But the idea that these conditions will continue sort of indefinitely, as it seems that they believe, not necessarily true, not guaranteed. And note the obviously pro-technology slant of all the comments as well as we go through this. These are people who are incapable of perceiving the idea of technological development as in any way negative. He says we'll get to keep female bodily autonomy and strong feminism, but again, these are contingent ideals, by which I mean they require certain material conditions to be in alignment in order to keep them. These aren't ideals that you can really have a priori. These require certain technologies to make them possible, technologies that I don't think are guaranteed to continue on into the future. He says it won't be a fun society or a technophilic one, which I think tells us everything that we need to know, really. The purpose of society is not to be fun. And again, technophilia relies on the continuation of these prerequisite material conditions. For example, electricity, that's the biggest one. It's the foundation on which much or most of our technology relies. And interconnected global systems like the internet, which are by no means guaranteed. He admits that the religious will replace us if they don't do this. Which leftists don't have children, right? So That's why they want to program children. They don't have children, so they need yours. And the idea of male-only gay colonies and female lesbian biker colonies is utter fantasy and pretty exclusionary, actually, which is, the idea that certain groups should have the right to their own spaces free from outsiders is pretty based, actually, to be fair. Moving on to a comment by Impossibly Velvet, we'll look at quite a few of her comments throughout. She says, "It's time for humanity to develop past its mammal/animal stage. Animals breed and give birth. Currently humans are just animals. It disgusts me." So, you obviously notice there that sort of anti-humanism that I was alluding to. But there's another thought that comes to mind reading this sort of thing, is the sort of Gnostic undertone to it, which we'll explore more as we go further. But the previous guy had said about being a genderless tribe with no sexual organs, which for me is just grim, awful, anti-human. And this commenter here has just said that, it's time for humanity to develop past its mammal stage, because currently humans are just animals and it's disgusting. Well, I disagree, but continuing on to another comment by the same person, and this is fascinating. She says, "People's minds are clouded by emotion. If you leave emotions aside and analyse the facts about pregnancy and childbirth in detail, it's an absolutely shocking process. Well, without emotion, humanity would have died out long ago. We're here because of the ignorant, happy little breeders. It's disturbing because pregnancy alters a woman's brain processes to not care about anything other than the well-being of the parasite. Nature cares about nothing other than ensuring its survival. Most human behaviour can be traced down to will to mate/procreate. It's not a willing choice, it's the parasitic biological body imposing its will on the rational mind." Now, returning to the topic of Gnosticism, you can see here she says that most human behaviour can be traced down to the will to mate, and it's not a willing choice because it's the parasitic biological body imposing its will on the rational mind. This is something that I addressed in the first volume of The Spirits of Conservatism. The idea, a lot of leftists do have this slightly sort of Gnostic bent, where they see the pure will as being caged in flesh, which places limitations on it. The sort of physical constraints of, having a human body, which you have to exist in. They view this, the fact of these constraints, they view as a sort of cosmic oppression which needs to be abolished. And obviously the sort of transhumanists view the solution to that as being transhumanism, right? We have to transcend our disgusting human bodies, so that the pure will can do what it wants to do without sort of outside influence. Well, inside influence, I suppose, biological influence. She also says, which I find quite funny, that people think too much with their emotions, and that's why they want to cling on to the old ways. But her reason for advocating this development is based on disgust. She said that herself. It's disgusting. Ted Kaczynski has a line in his manifesto where he says that leftists like to portray themselves as rational, but their actions portray them as, in no way simply cool-headed logicians. Going back to the argument of whether or not we should do this, we don't really see any convincing arguments for why we should do this. We're given the argument that it would relieve women from the burdens of pregnancy and childbirth, which is fair, I suppose. But other than that, it all simply comes down to pregnancy and childbirth are disgusting. We're so advanced and progressive now. Since we are sort of theoretically able to do away with natural pregnancy and natural childbirth through technology, we should. It's the future. Just think of all the queer non-binary communes we could create. I mean, rubbish, fantasy. This commenter says about the altering the brain chemistry to care about the parasite, which, the word parasite to describe a baby is insane to me, and also technically wrong. A parasite has to be of a different species from the host in order to be called a parasite. A developing baby, a fetus, is not a parasite. It's a human life, which is a beautiful thing. But these people, they don't care about this stuff. They're materialists. They're selfish materialists. They're children, basically. They're children who want no responsibilities, and they want no obligations. I was saying that they don't want the constraints of their physical body to get in the way of their rational will, but they also don't want the constraints of social obligations to get in the way of their rational will either, which is why they hate the idea of having children. They hate the idea that you have a duty or an obligation to look after your parents in their old age. All of this. She says about altering the brain chemistry to care about the parasite, which, the implication there is that any outside influence is inherently oppressive, which I find incredibly solipsistic, and it's essentially that the will should be able to do whatever it desires. She even says that it's not a willing choice, it's the body imposing its will on the mind, which again, going back to Gnosticism, they think that it should be the other way around. The will should be able to impose itself on everything else, not the other way around. The will should not be, there should be no obstacles to the will. Almost all leftist complaints, you'll notice, can be boiled down essentially to, it's not fair. Like children, the way I look at it, life isn't fair, but one aspect of maturity is coming to terms with that fact. Sometimes in life there will be limitations preventing you from doing things that you want to do, and sometimes there'll be things that you don't want to do but you have to do. What are you going to do about it? It's just life. Technology isn't the solution to these problems. Anyway, moving on. Same commenter again. She says, what disturbs me? Knowing that I exist because one day my mother and father decided to copulate and play hide the sausage and forgot to use protection. 9 months later I popped out of a vagina. It's degrading. I wish I'd have been created through an artificial womb. A few hundred years from now, humans will look back to this point in time appalled and in disbelief at how we used to live like animals. The idea that being popped out of a vagina is degrading. Call me old-fashioned, but being popped out of a pod in a baby farming factory sounds far more degrading to me. It sounds like a dystopia, like a dystopian hellscape, like in Huxley's Brave New World, right? And she says, we'll be in disbelief that we used to live like animals, but we literally are animals. I think it was Aristotle, it was some Greek anyway, who defined humans as the rational animal. But rationality is only one half of that equation. I think we do well to humble ourselves and remember that we are animals. We might be smart animals with opposable thumbs and all that, but ultimately we are fallible, we are flawed. We are constrained by, we have these physical limitations. We are animals. Now, the original poster now comments and says, agreed. I'm tired of people pretending it's beautiful because it's a natural process. Fuck no. Nature is absolutely revolting a lot of the time. Pregnancy especially is just horrid, and listen to this. The body is contorted and malformed as a parasite on the inside is rampantly leeching off all the body's resources to then burst out in a bloody screeching mess that's completely useless larval human who is entirely dependent on the parents for several years until it's capable of so much as lying on its front without dying. It's long overdue that we move past it. Just disgusting. Just so anti-human and disgusting. And you see again babies being compared to parasites, which is, is standard fare for leftists, but it really angers me, because babies are beautiful and young children are amazing, right? And the way they talk about it, like it's some alien that's attached itself to your body, and it's like such a burden No, it's a beautiful thing. You may be children yourselves, and you may be opposed to the idea of, putting something else above you because you're so selfish. But you don't have to talk about babies like that. It really gets on. I hate it. I hate it. This guy says that it's long overdue that we move past it, which I think is quite funny, because it betrays a certain view of history, this sort of progressive view of history where, because of the advance of technology, right, natural birth is outdated now. It's a thing of the past. It's like everything for the left, really. It's chronological snobbery. And I have the quote here from C.S. Lewis when he created that term, chronological snobbery. He says, "It's the uncritical acceptance of the intellectual climate common to our own age, and the assumption that whatever has gone out of date is on that account discredited. But you must find why it went out of date. Was it ever refuted, or did it merely die away as fashions do? If the latter, this tells us nothing about its truth or falsehood. From seeing this, one passes to the realization that our age is also a period, and certainly has, like all periods, its own characteristic illusions. They are likeliest to lurk in those widespread assumptions which are so ingrained in the age that no one dares to attack or feels it necessary to defend them." So, like I said, it's chronological snobbery, right? Natural childbirth is a thing of the past, and if you still do that, then you're weird, and you're behind the times, and you need to keep up. The old way is discredited as a result of being the old way. The technology which makes artificial wombs possible also consequently makes natural birth outdated. The idea that, we have the technology to use artificial wombs now, and therefore we should. But again, returning to a theme from earlier, this is a line of thinking which assumes that the current material conditions will remain stable, which isn't guaranteed. It's quite possible, all but guaranteed in fact, that we are in a period which will give way eventually to a new period. And this new period may well be less interconnected and less globalized and less technologically advanced as this current period. It's this Faustian bargain that the way that things are now, it will only get better. There will never be any deceleration. It's just going to keep going in this one direction because of this progressive sort of view of history that they have. They cannot conceive of things going backwards. And I think because of the way that our world is, this globalized, interconnected world, this is an aberration. This is a very, very short period in history, which, like I keep saying, might not necessarily last forever. In fact, I think it probably won't. I think there will come a time where there will be like a period of deglobalization, and we will have to do without some of the technology that we take for granted right now. But that's something I'll go more in detail on in my Ted Kaczynski essay coming sometime soon. So we have a final comment from Impossibly Velvet, who says, "The utter imperfection and fragility of the human body just doesn't fit with how capable we've become in mind and spirit. That's why transhumanism is the natural next step in evolution. There's nothing wrong with animals per se, but the animal is something that we can soon surpass as humans, courtesy of this extremely well-developed mind of ours. What it means to be human will be completely redefined in the next few centuries." Now, again, this idea that we've become so capable in mind and spirit that this therefore means transhumanism is the natural next step is so ridiculous. And she says that this is the natural next step in evolution, but it isn't. It's a very unnatural step in evolution. She was saying earlier about the biological body imposing itself on the rational will, but this is the other way around. She's simply doing the opposite. She wants to impose the rational will on the human body, which, doesn't really work like that. Not really. We've become so caught up, or these people at least have become so caught up in technology that they think it's the solution to their problems. And there are some problems that it can solve, don't get me wrong. Like, I know the washing machine, the fridge, right, the oven. These are good inventions. Or in the case of these people, the microwave, more likely. These are good inventions, right? And they solve problems, they make our lives easier, but there are some things that you just can't fix, and I think childbirth is one of them. I don't think there's any getting away from real, natural, proper childbirth. And again, going right back to the beginning, even if there was, why would we want to? It's wrong, it's playing God, it's not right. And again, it relies on certain conditions that aren't necessarily always going to be the case, and probably won't be. She says there's nothing wrong with animals per se, but the animal is something we can soon surpass. Well, as I said, we may be the rational animal. These people seem to be forgetting about the animal part of that, and they see that as something to be overcome. She says surpassed. Not possible. Not going to happen. And even if it could happen, why would we want it to? There is nothing wrong with being an animal. There's nothing wrong with being human. It's the way we were made. It's who we are. It's what we are. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't see it as anything to be surpassed. And I don't think it's possible that it will be surpassed. But we'll have to wait and see on that. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm not. What it means to be human will be redefined in the next few centuries. Again, progressive view of history. Keep pushing forwards. Nothing is ever going to go backwards. This is the path. Not necessarily true. I personally hope that that isn't true. I hope we can sort of wean ourselves off of all this crazy technology which destroys what it means to be human and which acts like this sort of mind virus which turns people away from humanity. This sort of overtones of most of these comments are so anti-human. And it really worries me that there are people out there who think this way, because it just shows how far wrong we've gone as a species. We've gone way too far, and we need to turn back. But anyway, just a few thoughts on transhumanism. Hope you enjoyed, and I will have a new essay analysing Ted Kaczynski's manifesto sometime soon. Thanks for watching. Take care.